Hi, and welcome to the final Week 4 previews for Hyper Juken Power Surge. Today we look at a new Kata, Breaker, and Attack card for Mark. Some of today's cards are going to be pretty interesting in the long run, so let's get started. Impact Form 1 is a new red Hyper Accelerating Kata. Instead of being tied to an effect, Impact Form 1 is directly tied to combat itself. Your attacks gain a hit effect to raise your Hyper X, where X is their level. Now this means your level 0 attacks still won't raise your Hyper, but your level 2 attacks can raise your Hyper 2. It also means that your Hyper attacks, should they hit, recharge your Hyper meter to 1/3 of its natural maximum capacity. This also assists Mark's Supreme Chokeslam into Supreme Crusher play. Chokeslam can be performed on 6 Hyper instead of 7, since it will raise his Hyper 2 naturally, then hit for the 9th Hyper and stun your opponent, fully setting up Crusher. If you're familiar with Olaturno paired with Rejuvenation Form 1, Impact Form 1 is pretty similar in terms of results. The harder you lean into level 1 attacks, the better results you gain. The difference being red typically likes more level 1 and higher attacks than blue, so Impact Form 1 will raise your Hyper more regularly than Olaturno will heal you. Completing the new cycle of Breaker cards is Tenacious Guard. Tenacious Guard has most of the trappings of the current cycle of Breaker cards, but has a secondary effect. To start with, it has the standard clause: prevent the next 3 combat damage your opponent's current attack would inflict. However, if Tenacious Guard prevents all remaining damage, it gets sent to your key pool. With Mark's ability to prevent 1 combat damage natively, Tenacious Guard's effect is being set off pretty much all the time. An attack would have to inflict 7+ combat damage to push Tenacious Guard into a position where if it is revealed as combat damage, it might not give full effects. And even then, it's just if it's revealed as the first card of combat damage. Secondly, if you use Tenacious Guard as payment for an attack, it's removed from the game. It's a one-time deal, unless you could work around it. Tenacious Guard is great as a general use breaker card, easily one of the best. Can't go wrong with Key Ramp, especially in the constructed format where both key flow forms come into play. High Knife Hand Chop is a level 1 4-power punch with Chip 2 and hit raise your Hyper 2. Not the most complex card in the world, but it does its job. Unless your opponent can block it with an effect, it deals 2 damage regardless via Chip. If it hits, with Mark's stock configuration, 5 combat damage, raise your Hyper 2, then another 1 from Impact Form 1. That's 1/3 of your way to max Hyper. High Knife Hand Chop ultimately serves as a great burst of Hyper and block punishment. Gaining 2 Hyper in one shot can be game changing, especially if your opponent has no way to get an EX fighter back down, so they want to block it, meaning your other attacks have a greater chance of hitting, and High Knife Hand Chop does 2 chip damage to boot. It can be even more potent with burst fighters, since their transformation into a Hyper fighter is automatic. Just something to ponder. Thank you for watching today's preview video for Hyper Juken's second set, Power Surge. Remember to like, subscribe, and share to keep up to date with Hyper Juken news and content. Come back next time when we cycle back to Louise and learn just what makes her the best around.